Hey guys, today I'm going to show you how to make this classic robin's egg cake. It's the perfect cake for Easter and it's beyond easy. Also, it's really delicious. Let's get started. We're going to make our bird's nest for the top of the cake out of some Angel Flake sweetened coconut. I'm spreading out about maybe 5 ounces of sweetened coconut flakes onto a baking sheet. I'm going to bake it at 325 Fahrenheit for maybe 5 minutes, making sure to toss all the flakes halfway through so that it's evenly toasted. We're going to be sifting all of our dry ingredients into a large bowl. I have 1 2/3 cups of all-purpose flour. So sift it out. Sifting is important because one, it aerates things, helps you mix things up together more easily, and prevents any clumps from getting in. 1/4 teaspoon baking soda, a teaspoon of baking powder, 1 cup of granulated sugar, finishing off with a 1/4 teaspoon of kosher salt. Now we'll whisk it all together. Before we start with the wet ingredients, we're going to separate the egg whites from the yolks. We're not going to use the yolks this time just because they're a little bit more yellow than I'd like, and I want to keep that cake nice and bright and white. Into my bowl, 3 egg whites at room temperature, 1/2 cup of sour cream at room temperature, 1/2 cup of milk. I actually like to use warm milk for this. 3 teaspoons of vanilla extract. Now let's give it a whisk before we add our next ingredient in. Our final wet ingredient is 3/4 cup of unsalted butter at room temperature, and I get a ton of questions on the blog about this step of the cake. You're gonna add it into your batter. You can totally use an electric mixer. Mine broke and I just never bothered to get a new one. So right now you can see the butter is all clumped up. It almost looks like cottage cheese. That's fine, because now we're gonna fold in our dry ingredients and it's gonna be all okay. Now we're adding our dry ingredients to the wet. It's a really simple recipe. And just mix it in. This recipe makes just enough batter for 3 6-inch pans. I love this size because I don't overeat, basically. I'm surrounded by cake all day, so this is the perfect size for a small family to like nibble on cake and be totally pleased. If you want to use a 9-inch pan, go ahead and triple the recipe. Okay, we're gonna butter our pans now and then flour them to prep them for the batter. Add in a couple tablespoons of flour and then move it around and tap out any excess. I'm gonna distribute my batter into the 3 pans, and I do use a kitchen scale just to make sure the levels are really gonna be exactly the same. Final step before adding these guys into the oven is baking strips. These are just wet fabric strips that I'm gonna add to the edge of the pan, and they're basically gonna slow the cooking down on the outside so it's an even bake, which means a flat top and no burnt edges. They're really like magic. I highly suggest them. Now I'm going to pop these guys into the oven at 340 degrees Fahrenheit for about half an hour, or until the centers are set and the edges are just pulling away from the pan. That's when you know they're ready to pop out. For this cake, I'm making just a simple vanilla buttercream. Really easy, just like 3 or 4 ingredients, and it's a crowd pleaser. If you wanted it to be even smoother and creamier and less sweet, you can click up over here for my How to Make Italian Buttercream video and give that a try. Really tasty, and if you think that American buttercreams are too sweet, Italian buttercream is for you. All right, into my standing mixer, I'm adding in 1 pound or about 450 grams of unsalted butter at room temperature, and I'm using a paddle attachment to whip this up. Now we're gonna mix on low for like maybe 5 minutes, or just until it's really creamy and soft. Okay, my butter is really creamy and very silky, as you can see. Now we're going to sift in 2 pounds of confectioner sugar in 2 batches. So sift in 1 pound, mix, sift in the rest. If you think, oh my gosh, this is so much sugar, you don't have to use this much. It's to taste. It's like any seasoning, like salt or pepper. For this type of buttercream, just add as much sugar in as you'd like. Now I'm gonna cover this with a tea towel and mix on low for just a couple minutes until the butter is incorporated with the sugar. Now we're gonna add in a little bit of vanilla for flavoring. Give it a mix. You can see because only half of the sugar is in here, it's almost a bit soupy. It's not gonna be holding up its shape. And it's time for the rest of the sugar. I'm gonna add a couple tablespoons of cream, just a little bit of a drizzle so the consistency is nice and creamy, but still stiff enough to decorate with. I'm also adding in a healthy pinch of salt to counteract all of that sweetness. It's a nice balance. I'm gonna color a beautiful robin's egg blue with a little bit of gel food coloring. Go very slowly, adding a little bit at a time until you get the color that you like. So I added in like 2.5 drops of blue food coloring, and I got this, which I'm very happy with. It's gonna darken up a bit as it is exposed to the air, so don't worry about it being a little bit too light. Last prep step before we start assembling the cake is to mix about a tablespoon of cocoa powder with just enough vanilla extract to liquefy it into a paint that we can splatter on for our little speckles on the cake. Okay, so to assemble the cake, we're gonna pipe buttercream on the first layer and start stacking. Once we're done, it's time to coat the outside in buttercream and then smooth it using an offset spatula and/or a bench scraper. Now we're ready to flick on some cocoa. This is going to simulate that speckled look you get on a bird's egg. It's a good idea to practice this before you start flicking it onto the cake. I actually set up some wax paper on my kitchen cabinets and flicked there to make sure the consistency was right and I had my technique down. Once you've done this, it's time to chill the cake before we add on our bird's nest. Make your mound of toasted coconut on top and then add your eggs. It's that easy. Now you have a beautiful little bird's nest on top of your cute little cake. I'm so happy with the way this speckling came out. It looks like a beautiful little robin's egg, and it was so easy. This cake is really delicious. I hope you get to try the recipe. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.